It's International Women's Day on the 8th of March, which means that if your algorithms are anything like mine, you're being presented with an awful lot of facts about where women's realities are at. And it doesn't exactly paint a pretty picture. But here's why we have a surprising advantage and why I'm still optimistic about the female financial space. Hi, welcome back. My name is Zoe, and this is my channel, Words on Wealth. Do give me a like and a subscribe if you're enjoying these videos. Drop any comments with thoughts that you have, all nice, please, hopefully. It really does help me to know, firstly, what you're enjoying, and secondly, just to boost as well this channel's visibility and hopefully get more women and anybody else that feels they've been left out of the financial conversation. So let's start with some of those realities, because it can't be denied there are an awful lot of financial gaps that are out there when it comes to women and the overall monetary space. The first one, and arguably the one that kind of underpins all of them, is that there is a gender pay gap in every single country in the world. In fact, no country has achieved gender pay parity. Globally, the gender pay gap, and that is, by the way, difference in average wages earned by women and men, is around 20%. It differs country to country, but slightly alarmingly, some countries are even seeing the pay gap starting to grow again. The pay gap then feeds into other financial gaps, such as the pensions gap. In the UK, for example, women retire with nearly 50% less in their pensions, and they actually start with almost 13% less going into their pensions. It's no surprise that if throughout their career women earn less, less is going into their pensions, and then guess what? Go figure. Their pensions are lower as and when they retire. This pensions gap could also be owing to quite a significant investing gap. This is that women generally invest less than male counterparts. There's all sorts of statistics out there, and some of them are difficult to see because investing can be across multiple different accounts. But by and large, in the UK, it's around 24% of accounts held by women and 39% held by men. But by and large, in almost every country where investing statistics are available, there are more male investors than there are female. Now, some of this might be to do with the fact that women generally have less to be able to put into savings and investments, because there's also a savings gap. That is how much money women have in cash and are able to access. Again, coming back to that first one, the pay gap, if of course there is lower levels of pay amongst women, it's kind of likely that they'll have lower levels of savings. And these lower levels of savings mean that there is also a home ownership gap, because in order to buy a home in most countries, you need some sort of deposit, which often comes from savings. And women generally have lower deposits, earn less, so are able to borrow less. And as a result, it's harder to get onto the property ladder. That means that they can't buy a property necessarily to live in and have worse home ownership and home generally outcomes. But it also means from an investing perspective, they're less likely to have property investments. And speaking of investment, female-founded businesses receive around 2% of overall VC funding. And again, this has actually gotten worse as an overall picture. And this is in spite of the fact that actually it's proven now that most female-founded businesses generally last longer and provide better yields for VC firms. That's venture capital, by the way, for anybody that is that's venture capital for anybody that is unaware. And these firms generally see greater outcomes from female-founded startups. So if you've already started to switch off and felt like you're in a bit of a doom loop, then hold tight and please don't give up. It's so important that we are aware of these various different issues, because some of them we might have heard of, but some of them fly a little bit more silently under the radar. And if that is the case, what it means is that we can't necessarily do anything to mitigate them and to make changes, not just for ourselves, but also for our female friends, for our colleagues, for our sisters, for our families, and of course, for the future generations as well. Now, there's growing rhetoric around why these gaps really exist. And what many people might think is that women choose these kind of outcomes. For example, they might think that women often choose to work in lower paid sectors, such as care work, retail, or indeed childcare. But actually, if you look over the last 50 to 100 years, often sectors that were well paid, that had women in them, have shifted away. I think some of the first female computer technologists, if you want to call them that, as they were back in the day, were earning a relatively little amount. That has now become a sector that is dominated by men and is seen as relatively well paid. When it comes to things like part time work and taking career breaks, of course, this may well be painted as some sort of choice that then negatively impacts women's overall earnings and financial position. Actually, the reality is if things of policy such as maternity and paternity leave don't support women returning to work and boosting their earnings, or indeed men taking equal levels of time off to be able to balance the overall gender split, then it exacerbates the problem. When it comes to saving and putting money aside as well, it's really a surprise that women can be quite down on themselves from how the media like to portray women. Because, in fact, there are loads of statistics that suggest and show that articles, when it comes to money and women, generally focus on the fact that women are frivolous and need to learn to control themselves a bit more when it comes to shopping. Whereas the similar articles pointed at men focus more on their gains, their investments, and how well they're doing. And then all of this feeds into the stereotype that actually women are little and meek and these difficult creatures that actually don't like to invest because they're too risk averse. And that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Women aren't necessarily more risk averse, but if we keep telling them that they are, then it's only going to continue to do so. Equally, risk averse doesn't have to have the same negative connotations that it often comes with, and can actually be pivoted into something much more positive when it comes to investing, which I'll come on to talk about. Because there are some simple things that we can all do to try and change the stark reality of some of these facts and move the goalposts to make things better for ourselves and for the next generation of women into the future. Because loads of studies show that actually women outperform men when it comes to retail investing. So that's investors like you and I, not professional fund managers. Over time, and this is crucial, over a longer period of time, women generally see greater gains in their portfolios. There's a few key reasons for this. The first is generally that they trade less, they take a longer term view, and they don't chop and change as much. And what this means is that they incur lower trading fees and they're able to actually just enjoy some of the gains that come in their portfolio. The other reason why this is that they have a little bit more of a strategic view. They're not trying to desperately beat the market and taking quite a narrow potential view within their portfolio, but rather generally hold a more diversified portfolio for the longer term, and that really serves them well. So this outperformance really goes to show that over time, we will hopefully start to see changes and shifts within that investing gap and within that pensions gap as well. But of course, in order to do that, we need to keep increasing education levels when it comes to women and investing. We need to keep talking about how successful some of those, in inverted commas, risk-averse strategies can be, and how generally women do outperform men. We need to keep educating women about the importance of a diversified portfolio and building one that is low maintenance and lasts for the long term. It should be simple, and it is simple. And I promise I'll keep making more and more videos to try and do this and to educate people on how easy it can be to get started. Because ultimately, the sooner that you do get started, the better it is in the long run for the value of those investments. And last but not least, we need to keep boosting confidence that this is the case and these gaps can be closed. As soon as we sink into some of the negativity and the doom and gloom, whilst it is useful to hear, it's not exactly helpful for driving change and driving growth. The facts are there, and the positivity for me really outweighs the negativity. I believe that we have, as women, secret advantages, such as a more strategic approach to investing that does mean we outperform in the long run. But we have to keep talking to each other about it. It might not be the most popular dinner party topic. I know that it's something that often women don't talk about, but unfortunately, or fortunately for them, men do talk about it. So we need to be the ones that drive the change and make sure we're initiating some of those conversations from something that has been taboo to something that can be more open. The more open that we become about it, the more that the education can spread, and also the more that confidence can be boosted.
that there are others who don't know it all, that there are others that have made small mistakes when it comes to their investing or their finances, but still carried on and lived to see a portfolio that hopefully grows. So these financial gaps do still exist as we look at International Women's Day in 2026. That is the reality that we're facing. But behavioural changes can make a huge difference, so that hopefully when we come back in 2027 and even looking forward to 2036, 2046 and so on, you get the idea. These gaps can be ever smaller. So comment with one thing that you're going to do to try and make some change to your finances this year, and a little bit how you can spread the good word to other women as well on this International Women's Day.